Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for April 5th, 2024. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating and sharing my screen. And also here are Ralph Kohler, Aaron McHale, Offer Schall, Simo Helston, Scott, and Thomas Howell. Thanks all for coming. We haven't had quite this many people in a few weeks. So today we're going to look at what's currently a contrib module, the navigation module. It's being developed by several core developers, and the hope is that once it's in a good shape, it will be merged into core. But we've installed the module on a couple of test sites, both of them being shared via ngrok. So there's a standard installation and there's a umami. I haven't logged in yet. I assume it's the usual.
Yes.
And could someone share the links again in the Zoom chat, because we had, whoops, a couple of people join in the last few minutes. There we go. And this toolbar in the left is what the module is providing. And does anyone have anything to say about it, just looking at it in its initial appearance? Seems to be a little different in the two installations.
You have media installed.
Ah, yes, that's what, is that the only difference? Umami, of course, installs Nita. Yeah, I think you're right. That is the only difference. So I know Ralph has thought about this already, but I think I'll first give other people a chance. Is there anything I should do to start investigating this? It seems that if I hover over one of these items with children, it gets expanded. I can click on configuration, I assume. No, clicking on this only opens or closes the child.
Yeah, so just a bit of background, I guess, because I've been sort of involved in some of this. The navigation modules went through many rounds of usability testing to get to where we are today. For instance, we did some pop-up testing, DrupalCon, and then we've done some subsequent one-to-one testing, and each round has resulted in minor improvements. So a couple of things for worth being I guess being aware of is that like the clicking on the configuration, as you saw there, takes you into that submenu is kind of a by design, I guess, because you know, where previously you'd be sent off to these big listing pages, and I guess conversation is like how useful or like how useful are those in terms of like when you can navigate through using this, and there's like conversations around the breadcrumb as well around this, which I'm not sure how far they've progressed. But you know, there was also some research done. I guess there was a top task survey, things like that, done in terms of the hierarchy of the navigation, and so the navigation module itself doesn't change the administrative menu, but there's potential for future work to do that, because what we want, I think, is to result in a little bit, you know, take the opportunity of a bit of a flatter menu, or do a more broader reorganization is the idea. But you'll notice, for instance, with this, there's different groupings that we haven't seen before. So for instance, we have create is a menu that did not previously exist, and that provides quick access to create. It looks like at the moment, I guess it's just content types and user. Potentially other things will show up there. I'm not too familiar with exactly what goes under the create menu. But you'll see there's also like quick links to other things there, like blocks, content files. So there's a bit of an effort there to incorporate some of these ideas that have been floating around, but this is slightly separate to the sort of broader reorganization effort of the administrative menu. So hopefully that was a bit of a useful background just to share there. So we are at quite late stages in terms of all the usability testing that's gone on. And I'll give way to Ralph as he's got his hand up.
Just one brief addition for the basic pages of interest, aside the sidebar you're currently in, there are also 2 configuration pages we should take a look at, just as an FYI.
Okay. But I'd still like opinions from people who are seeing this with fresh eyes, and I'm one of them. And I guess the first thing I wanted to notice is that, as I said, clicking on the link only opens the submenu. And as I opened system basic site settings, I can use the breadcrumbs to get to the configuration page, but I can't get there from the navigation menu. And I can get to the top level administration page. And I agree that I personally don't go to either of those pages very often, so I won't miss it, but I just want to notice that it's a little harder to get to those pages. And I guess the other thing I notice is that this section from structure down to announcements looks like it mirrors the administration menu structure. Ending with people and reports,
Yeah.
It's a little odd that announcements is not separated from the usual administration menu by one of these horizontal lines. And the other, I guess the shortcuts is part of the standard toolbar. And I guess these 4 items are new.
Yeah, just I get up some context there. So there's the like idea of groupings here. So kind of like how the current toolbar has the top tray and then the like inner tray, I guess you could say. It's got those 2 levels. It's taking that and just providing a different view of it, I guess you could say, but also adding in that create menu and some other things there. So there's this idea of like being able to have these groupings. And personally, I don't know exactly how you configure those. There might be, as well said, I think there's some configuration that we should spend some time looking at, making sure that that is following best practice. But yeah, in terms of the announcements, that we always intended that would, and I don't actually, it's interesting that link is there because that did previously open in the tray. But the idea is like long-term announcements. We don't envision the home of announcements being a link on the sidebar that will ideally move to a dashboard in the future. But that's a separate initiative. And I think Thomas, you had your hand up next.
The one point, so I agree with everything that Benji said. But in particular, I wanted to highlight the kind of, they're not orphan pages, but I always think of them as orphan pages when they exist, but there's only one non-obvious way to get to them. So if you can only get to them through the breadcrumbs, I understand why those pages exist. And I seem to recall this has been a historical problem where like we even as far back as Drupal 6 in my experience, there would be places that might be helpful to some people, but you could only get to them through a particular way. Um, and I'm not a fan of that. I feel that either they shouldn't exist and not be available, or like I understand why, because you have breadcrumbs and you need to have something for that breadcrumb to exist, but it just gets very confusing to me. So I just wanted to emphasize that one point that Benji made. Thank you.
There are actually two not obvious ways to get to those pages. So if Benji, if you click on configuration, open that drawer, and then click the title there, the heading. So that's something that it's not also very obvious.
How do you
Yeah,
get to admin?
I
Yeah,
don't think you ever could, even in the current toolbar. Like, you can only get there by going top up in the breadcrumb. Like, if you click manage on the current toolbar, it just expands the tray. So that's not a regression. And also I would, again, I'm not like I wouldn't encourage us to spend like too much time focusing on that, because I think that is kind of by design. There is, like I said, a broader effort going on thinking around what is the admin navigation structure. So I don't want to spend like the whole meeting talking about like these pages, if that makes sense.
I see
You're
an
right, just
admin at the bottom. Was that just the user admin?
I just uninstalled the navigation module from this site, and right, I don't see any way to get to the top level administration pages. And I'm sorry, ask again, Shal.
I'm saying at the
Author.
bottom left there, I see admin. I was asking if that's just the username and not to be confused with, yeah. Okay.
And Scott, you've had your hand raised for a while. What did you want to say?
So I've been a little involved with the module as well.
Could you speak a little louder, please?
I have been involved with the module development as well. So I'm aware enough to know that what we're sort of looking at is the create section is the admin content menu that we're used to in toolbar, and that's building that down more cleanly for content editing. And so that's why we see the separation between structure and announcements and the rest of the admin tools. The landing page, the breadcrumb, I understand. I didn't actually get what people were talking about, but the breadcrumb and you talking about clicking on the configuration as the landing page until actually right now. Because Drupal, right, toolbar doesn't have any drop-down menus. So you used to have to get to a specific subsection landing page in order to get into the deeper tools, and that's what we're used to. We're still sorry, yeah, like we're looking at admin toolbar installed in Drupal. We're not looking at pure Drupal right now. So please uninstall admin toolbar.
This is the core Drupal toolbar. You may be used to seeing it in horizontal mode where there aren't any drop downs. I always prefer to
Thank you.
use it in this mode. I helped a little bit when Jesse Beach was developing this one.
Sorry, I'm used to it too. That's what it throws me off too, sorry. But that's the difference. So there's the difference that you needed to get to a landing page because there weren't older sub landing menus. And not all of admin menu gets all of the actual links from menu items. They get them from local tasks as well. So local tasks aren't attributed for all of the actual paths that exist in Drupal admin. So we see holes where you see like the new navigation menu going to a child page and that sort of thing, or the fact that we don't never see a pure /Drupal or /admin page anywhere in Drupal because that doesn't actually really exist.
So let's see, content.
You can go to /admin, but it's never in an actual page.
Okay, and what were you saying about local tasks? For instance, content has
So things like permissions and stuff like that are local tasks plugins. So you see, like, if something has an action link on it, you don't see that in a menu, but it's technically a page that gets created.
So on the people page, permissions, roles, and role settings are local tasks. I don't see them in the new navigation menu. I also don't see them in the current toolbar. So that doesn't seem to have changed, or were you saying something else about local
No, that's why
tasks?
I just meant to point out that is why we don't see them in a menu.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Just one brief addition about that behavior, something I've noticed 2 days ago. If you install Project Browser, for example, that's the only module I know that is adding one local task basically to the extend top-level menu. So that way you have a single sub-menu item in there. It's a slightly different behavior. I've already noted it, but yeah.
Okay, if you want to install Project Browser on this site, you can go ahead and I can.
I'm unable
illustrate
to
that.
because it's Drupal
Oh.
11 and
Okay.
it's only work on 10.
So
Yeah, so I was just gonna add that I think it's worth noting that like the fact that the local like permissions and rules and things are local tasks is kind of a symptom of like the toolbar in our current navigation paradigm. But as I said, this is a good example of something where in the future, once we do like a more wholesale reorganization of the admin navigation, I think that's the kind of thing that we'll see change.
Okay. One thing I don't like is that these menus expand on hover. And if I'm just sort of scrolling up and down, trying to reach announcements, well, it didn't happen this time, but before the reports stayed open. Well, maybe I had actually clicked on it. Well, or maybe I just can't see what I was seeing before, but I guess personally I would prefer expand on click rather than expand on hover. Obviously that's a debatable point. That's not at all clear cut. Go ahead, Sima.
Yeah, so that's a bit confusing here. According to my tests, they expand on click. So if you hover on, let's say, configuration,
Configuration, yes.
and you click it, then it goes away, click it again, and then
Yep.
move your cursor to the right side of the window. So
Space
here,
open.
and then move back to hover on reports,
Reports.
and then move to the right side of the window, and then move to configuration, hover, and move to the right side of the window. So this is a little bit strange, but it kind of does a couple of different things.
Yeah, so there's some invisible state here is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, so well, it's not invisible. If you clicked configuration, it has the focus on it, and
Yes.
then it stays open if you move away, but then it also opens the other ones when you hover on them. So it's kind of a
Okay, so the
and
state is
yeah.
visible. It's this outline. So
Yeah.
currently reports is selected and it will stay open if I wander away.
But that's kind of can easily feel inconsistent as it works. And also one thing I noted when you it's like there are like right next to each other because it's big enough pixel, but it's quite easy for myself at least to move a little bit down and to so that it goes over the next one. So it's kind of a little bit annoying. And also you can't click to keep it open. You have to click it to close it and then click it to keep it open again. So that's also kind of an extra step. So this is a little bit confusing.
Yeah, I also think it's confusing to have one selected and it stays selected as I move to other items, and then other items have the hover state, and the selected one is not showing at the moment. And if I move away, it's still not showing. And I kind of think that a lot of this confusion would be alleviated if we had a simpler click to expand behavior. Go ahead, Offer.
I think related, I'm going to share here a link that is, if you want to show it on the video. It's called, it's a name of triangle navigation or something. And the idea is, as you see the red thing, so something is
yes.
being calculated so you can nicely go to whatever you want to go to without it's getting close on the way. So maybe it's something we can utilize here.
It's already utilized here.
Really?
Yeah.
When I tested, it felt like it's not. That's why I suggested it. Oh, just this link that was shared here.
All right, I'm not going to try to read that URL for the recording. It's a rather long numeric string and on X, formerly Twitter. Scott, you wanted to say something?
So I agree, this looks weird, but maybe this should be an option where it's like a predictive hover option for users, that a user could actually say, I want predictive hovering, but not be the default.
Maybe,
I think it's also something that could be implemented at the theme level, couldn't it? I'm not sure that needs to be part of the core functionality. Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I was just going to say that maybe we could take a look at the configuration screen, because there is some configuration options, and so that might also help us guide this conversation. But
Yeah.
else Thomas has his hand up, so I just
Thomas, go ahead.
I was just regarding the like open or expand on hover. I had a tendency in menus that personally have frustrated me in the past to move from something. So like if I clicked on the S of structure to select it and I thought I had that selected, but then I went straight up to block lists, block layout. I want to just make certain that when we not to blocks, but like a diagonal to, if you click on go hover on structure again, I'm sorry. And if you went diagonal straight up there, how you went over to the right and then up, I would have a tendency to just slide straight up. And with the hover behavior in certain circumstances, the menu would collapse before I got to what I was trying to do. So you'd have to go, it ended up being very tricky. I just want to make certain that's not happening. I'm not accusing or saying that's happening, but I want to make certain if you click reports and you go up to status report diagonally, you're not going to accidentally hover on something else and change what menu you're going to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if I want the status report, I can hover or click on reports, and then I can go right and up and get to the status report. But if I go diagonally, I guess it first closes when I go to people, and then another menu opens, and by the time I get there, status reports is gone.
Right. I don't want that kind of behavior because that's been problematic for me.
And I have to click twice on reports. So hover and then click to close. And now it's not closing. I click. That's very confusing. So let me enable another one. Hover to open, click to close, click to open. And now somehow stayed open inconsistently. Yeah, this I agree with Thomas. It would be nice to be able to open it and then have it stay open as I move diagonally. So I'm beginning to feel more strongly that click to open would be a better option. But I think I will now give in to what Aaron has been telling me for a while, that I should look at the configuration. So where do I find it under configuration? User interface?
Yes, navigation blocks and navigation settings. The third one is also are the two.
Oh, so you actually, okay, great. You can configure those. Sorry, I just didn't realize that screen was there. That's great.
Yeah, so it comes with a plugin, and these are the 3 custom plugins that will come with it.
And just as a quick test, does this work the way I expect it to? If I drag shortcuts to the bottom and save, then indeed shortcuts go down here.
That is awesome. I didn't know about that. I love that so much because I've wanted that for a long time for the toolbar. That makes me, you have no idea how happy I am right now. Like really.
And I also notice there's a very old issue asking to make it configurable which menu shows up in the toolbar. It's currently hard-coded to be the administration menu. And obviously this gives us the choice of adding or presumably removing menus if we don't want them. Like I could disable the administration menu.
I've been very active on that issue in the past, I have to say.
And then I can re-enable it. What other translate, disable, or remove? And
Yes,
configure.
Scott was saying there's another configuration screen that you can go to that has like other options, I think, as well.
Okay, well, we'll get there. We're only a little more than halfway through the hour. What configuration? There's a title. Which is not displayed. Oh, so this is just standard block configuration. So that's just giving me a shortcut to the configuration of this block. So this is implemented as a block, which is then placed in the region. That's kind of standard. And that's so that's what these configure links are going. Anything else anyone would like to look at on this page before I go to the other configuration page?
I'm actually just looking at that, and I don't know if the place navigation block button should be inside the table. I feel like that should be outside the table. But I'm not sure if that's like a pattern from the block layout. I actually don't remember.
It would be in the
Yeah, I believe it is. Oh, this is the wrong sort of blocks. I was thinking of block layout.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not quite the same. Here the place block is on the same line as the menu name. So if it's not consistent with that, then maybe I guess you'd rather this be an action link.
Yeah, and Ralph's just posted an issue exactly for that already exists. So I think as long as if we support that, then we just add our weight behind that issue.
Okay, so just for the sake of the recording, this is issue 3427940. Make place navigation block a primary button and move it right before the table. I would say an action link rather than primary button, but that can obviously be debated on this issue. Anything else on this configuration page? Go ahead, Ralph.
Just one question, what everyone else's opinion is about the following detail. As you can see, you have content, administration, and shortcuts right here available, but could you click, for example, the place navigation block button? Because if you notice on the list, you have only 3 blocks available, but at the bottom you still have that help and the username. And if you take now a look at the list of available buttons, blocks to post, you have for one the user account menu and the user you're able to place, and what everyone's opinion is about that. Because for me, it's sort of confusing. I've also already opened an issue in that regard, but what your choice would be, because for one, you have 2 different blocks available in the context of user, and you not necessarily know which one is the block that is used in the toolbar, more or less directly, without any implicitly used. Yeah, the word I searched for.
So yeah, content administration and shortcuts. Content is presumably this. This is administration and shortcuts. And then we have help and, oh yeah, someone asked early on whether this would go to the main administration page, but that's the name of the currently logged in user admin. And these links seem to be there, not part of this page. And then yeah, I guess let's actually place these and have a look at them. I'll display the title just so it's easier to recognize them. So the user block is this thing that's automatically added at the bottom, and user account menu is my account and log out, which are similar to these options. Go ahead, Scott.
It's funny because we're placing only things in the top item, in the top section, but we can't place them in the bottom section.
Yes, and we also can't remove it from the bottom section.
Yeah. Yeah, and help should have menu task then. It's not clear that it's part of that specific plugin.
Like so maybe we apparently have 2, maybe 3 regions here, and maybe we should have the option to control what appears in each region.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, and then if we do have that, then it does make sense to have like use the layout, the pattern from block layout, where you have the each region with the button. So either, I guess what we're saying is either the place navigation block button should move to be a local action, the same way you would have like on the content list or whatever. Or if we're going to have more than one region, then we should follow the pattern that's used with block layout, and we have each region with a button for placing in that region next to the region name.
Right. Thomas?
I don't, this may have been what Ralph said or someone else has already said, but when you click on the place navigation block here, my brain kept on misinterpreting what I was seeing as I was thinking that where it says category menus, this was telling me which of these blocks were being used in the menu to the left to what I was physically seeing. I'm having trouble differentiating with the information available between which of these things are already in use and which of these things are not already in use.
Right. I was going to bring that up too. That if we already have 5 here, it would be useful to have some indication of which ones are already being used here. On the other hand, this is very close, but not exactly the same as the interface for placing blocks. And I think it should either be more similar or more different. I also wonder whether we can place things in the navigation regions directly from here. And I don't see it. So this is not a theme region. I guess the way it's structured is that this is its own block with its own subregions, and that's why it doesn't show up in the standard block placement screen. Go ahead, Ralph.
Yeah.
I will first quickly, and then
No, I was just gonna, I was just gonna basically just to clarify that. So like, yeah, because this appears in both the admin and the front end, it works independent of the theme, as does the current toolbar and other things like the off canvas tray. So just not to confuse it with theme regions, basically.
Right. So if I go to the home page, it's still there. Yes. Good point. Go ahead, Ralph.
Just one brief addition. I've added another link to an issue that deals basically about the topics we talked right now. Just one point to make. I made these same observation in regards you're unable to see which blocks are already placed, but Christina pointed out at the moment it is sort of intentional that you're able to add the same block X number of times, meaning you theoretically you could add administration for 4 times, for example. And that way, yeah, I have added 2 suggestions to that issue, how to handle it. Either if it just should be added 1 time, disable or remove the block and replace it with just a label. And the other option is basically if there is the option to edit several times, add a false column saying that block is already added 1, 2, or 3 times for whatever reason it's necessary.
Okay, so for the sake of the recording, this issue is 3438789. And you're discussing several of the things we already brought up. And go ahead, Simo.
Yeah, one thing I noticed is that the content block on the menu is not exactly the same that you can add when you place a new block, because if you use let's say German language site interface, then you have when with the navigation menu you get that content block, the content navigation block. But if you place navigation block, the one from the menu, it's called halt. So there is it's kind of there is something with the translations. So it uses different translation, maybe because that comes from kind of a the one title comes from navigation, comes from the menu name that has been translated, and then the other one doesn't. So it's with translations, it's a little bit confusing because.
Okay, so first of all, your audio is a little bit choppy. Secondly, let's see if we can look at what you're talking about here. So this is umami, so we have 2 languages, and I should go to place navigation block now, or should I go to the
I
French
think you
version of the
should
page?
change the user interface to Spanish.
Yeah, add German or Spanish to the active site.
This is umami, so we have Spanish by default, and I don't see any translation. So I guess that means that the module itself doesn't have translations yet.
I don't think strings are finalized.
Right. But if I were to go to, this is the Spanish version of block layout, and there must be something I'm doing wrong here. That
if you could go to configuration language. Region and
regional,
language.
yeah.
And then language. And then go detection and selection. It's the first is checked, then go to the admin user.
Here?
Yeah, edit profile. And scroll down. And administration page language, there's no preference, and set it to Spanish.
Okay. And this page still isn't translated. As we said, the strings haven't been finalized, but most other pages do have translations. So then getting back to this, we are looking at the Spanish. Okay, these column headers have now been translated. Menus and navigation have been translated. Oddly placed navigation block has not been translated. The names of the blocks have been translated. Okay, so Simo, what is it you're saying is or is not being translated?
I think that when you had this, my Spanish is not very good, but I think this contenido is probably content. So if you place that navigation block.
Let's display the title.
Yeah, so we can see that it's the same content with the navigation block content, but it has just different name. So here, the kind of the default blocks are not translated, but it has the same content. So it's kind of different instance of the same, but one of them is translated and the title and the other one not, but the content of those menus is using the same language.
Okay, so here in the sidebar, I say see crear archivos. That's the same thing. Same links I see here. I see that twice. It's confusing. This shows that shortcuts should be in between the two.
You haven't saved the page.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so shortcuts is at the top. And now that I saved the page,
Refresh.
these both say content.
It updated that name, updated the translations only after save navigation blocks in this list.
Okay, so I guess the point is then that when I submit this form, or when I submit one of these forms, that it's incompletely updating. I guess this is highlighted because it hasn't been saved yet.
But it appears on that navigation bar already.
Right,
So
between the two contents, we have whatever this is, node add.
We normally see an unsaved message with this sort of thing.
So it looks as though, you know, an attempt has been made to update the page immediately. So this already shows up here, but I haven't saved it. And if I just refresh the page at this point, was it going to go away? No, it's still there. If I force reload the page, it's still there. And when I click save, it's no longer highlighted. So there's something a little confusing going on there.
Could we, if there, assuming there's no other feedback here, might be worth taking a look at I think there's another configuration screen that's maybe worth looking at.
Yeah. Ralph?
Just one brief detail. Could you quickly go into one of those blocks and click configure? Just one question for you all.
First content block.
But maybe we should switch back to English.
Okay.
I guess you have to go into the admin edit profile.
Ah, yes. Same problem we were talking about before.
And set it to English.
Let me set it back to the default, which is no preference.
And if you take a look, expand the menu levels. I'm curious if that is clear or not to everyone.
I believe this is the standard configuration of a menu block, although it's a navigation block, not a menu block. So let's see what happens when I change the initial level to 2. So this is the one that does have the title contenido.
Now still in Spanish.
What
Oh,
happens when you click save navigation blocks now with the
so somehow
if you just click save navigation blocks. No, it doesn't change again.
Oh,
let me clear caches of this. Yeah, this is the umami.
I think this might be because the title is in configuration, and so the values there at the time when you saved it last were in Spanish, possibly. Maybe something to do with that. And I know there's like, I see there's translations, but yeah.
All right, this looks like a bug to me.
yeah, yeah, yep.
I don't know how we got into this situation, but there's something buggy with the translation of this configuration.
Yep.
Yeah,
let's move to the other then maybe. Or if you're able to look at it now in English.
Let's go back to your site, which is monolingual. And one thing I would like to try again is the initial visibility level is already set to 2. What if I set it to 4?
Yeah, so again, it's kind of a legacy thing because for the admin menu, administration is the only one first level link. Everything else is like second level and below.
Okay, and if I were to make the initial visibility level 1, then I would just have a single link for administration. And if I set it to 2, that's what I normally see. And if I set it to 3, then I get this rather overwhelming. Okay, so someone had asked whether, I think Ralph asked whether those options were clear. I personally think that if they're not totally clear, it's easy to do the test that I just did and figure out what they're doing. So let's see, user interface. And in this submenu, I do click to expand. It doesn't expand on hover.
Yeah, so that one there is new,
settings. So this is the second one.
Yeah, and this is something Christina was asking about around this logo settings. And also like there's the show top bar, which is experimental, but I don't think we have time. Maybe we'll have to look at that next week. Because that's a whole different thing. But one thing that we're asking, and we obviously only got like 5 minutes left, is about like so the logo options, it controls the little Drupal thing you see in the very top left. And that's what this is there for.
That's a little large.
I mean, Ralph was just saying in the chat that the top bar has basically no functionality at the moment, which I don't know if the iteration that I saw it in was different because it had more things when we were testing it, but maybe things have been taken out. That actually doesn't look like it's even showing right now. So I don't know if Ralph is that. Do you know, or Scott, do you know, like, if that's by design?
It's only showing on a few pages, not all at the moment.
Oh,
and
yeah. So like
it's context
content, for
sensitive.
instance. Yeah.
Context sensitive, but still, it has
No
no
data
real
created.
function.
Yeah, I think if you go, Benji, if you go to a piece of content, you'll see it appear now. So if you go to like the content and then select, yeah, and go to something. Yeah, there it is. So we have this
Up
more
here?
actions. Yeah.
Okay. Which looks like the local tasks.
Yeah, the idea is like we're kind of experimenting with like moving the local tasks out of the piece of content. And then what the idea is, like, if you click in there and go to edit, you'll see it tries to address a problem where, like, when you're going between the front end and the admin interface, the local tasks shift around depending on the theme. And so this is trying to provide some kind of like more consistent experience for going between the different the edit and the view and other things.
Okay, but we are running towards the end of the hour. There actually wasn't all that much configuration on that second configuration screen.
Sorry, I thought there was more, but one final thing. Oh, sorry, just one final thing that we haven't looked at. Just it's a very small thing, that in the bottom left there's a button to collapse and expand the toolbar. I realized it's like right at the bottom. Yeah, so we're out of time, but one thing people might want to look at is when it's in the collapsed view, how does it, how do people feel about it? Do those icons make sense? Is it still usable? All that kind of stuff. And obviously we didn't have time to touch on that today, but might be something to touch on in the future.
Another thing we didn't look at was how that behaves in mobile size.
Okay, Ralph?
Right.
Yeah, but I wanted also to say that you get a top bar with mobile. There's also another detail to note. Yep. What Simo said, basically. Yep.
Okay, so I think the two things that I think are pretty clear are that I think that it should be click to expand rather than hover to expand. And there seems to be something wrong with the translations. I'm getting a thumbs up from Aaron. Does everyone agree that that it should be click to expand?
I think it could be configurable, but default click to expand.
Okay, and Ralph?
I'm drawn between click to expand has less buggy behavior and mitigates a few problems. But hover, like Brandon at the Drupal Dojo yesterday said, if you take a look at admin toolbar, due to the fact that you have a horizontal toolbar and you're able to hover through and don't have those negative behaviors like here, it's way more, in air quotes, power user like. And I'm not sure what the best solution is yet, but it definitely needs some discussion. And yeah, I'm also +1 for a config.
Okay, and I think Thomas and Aaron also had thumbs up for
Yeah. I think
click to default. Yeah, I'm happy to add a configuration option, but I think the default should be click to expand.
I think that's one thing that would consider like user preference though, so not necessarily maybe like something that you can configure in the user settings. I think would be, because as Ralph said, it might be depending on the user's preferences and behaviors.
Yes, that's. So that would be adding something else to the user page. Kind of funny that when I reload the page, the highlighting here goes away, but. Okay, I shouldn't introduce new things at this point. Go ahead, Ralph.
Aside the 2 points you've mentioned, is there an agreement about the 2 issues I've shared? And with the addition for the place block issue to basically make the distinguishment between if you have sections, then place the block in a button like the block layout page, and if there aren't sections, then move it as an action item. That was the consensus I've heard. Okay.
Thumbs up from Aaron and Thomas. Yeah, and I think I said earlier that it should either be more like the block layout page or less like it.
Okay.
Scott?
No, sorry, just bad click.
Okay. So thumbs up on the navigation box. Okay, thanks all. We're a couple of minutes over. And yeah, maybe we'll have another look at this next week, or if not next week, then soon.
Thanks, everyone.
And I'll comment on the issue.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thanks, Benji. Thanks, Ralph, for writing. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
But
Have a nice weekend.